Hi, welcome to the Treat Show. I'm your host, J-Lo, and joining me is our co-host, OG Tyler.
Yo, yo, yo.
How you doing, Tyler?
I'm chilling. I'm just enjoying this Tuesday, you know?
It is a good Tuesday. The weather was like a little bit nicer today than it's been.
Yeah, it's going up on a Tuesday.
I mean, yeah. So we have a special show today because we have Andrew Hatch in the studio. He is a specialist in Colorado with all of the things that we get affected by. Pathogens, I would say is Andrew's biggest offering today. And tissue culture, it's something that I think everybody's intrigued by but doesn't know how to go about it or is kind of intimidated by it in some way. So I'm excited to introduce Andrew. Let's get him over here.
Hello, I'm Andrew Hatch.
How are you doing, Mr. Hatch?
Not bad.
Would you mind introducing your company?
All right, so I'm Director of Product Safety for National Cannabis Risk Prevention Services. We are a risk assessment and correction company. Basically, we have an assessment process that can identify risk across over 50 categories, which covers an entire vertically integrated operation. Basically, everything from the ergonomics of your trim trays to your crop protection, business structure, and compliance.
So exciting. I feel like, how long have you been in the industry now?
Well, I've been in for 6 years now.
6 years. Where was the first company that you started this journey with?
So I started my cannabis journey with Native Roots Cannabis Company back in 2017. So I went to work for them and ultimately ended up running their scientific operations department. And in that department, we had 5 trained scientists, 3 clean rooms, and we did all sorts of kind of weird weed science. A lot of it was centered around crop protection and product safety, and we were some of the first people doing that kind of work back then. And so it was really an interesting place to kind of cut my teeth in the industry. It was not kind of the usual tour, but I ended up being able to do some kind of interesting things that I think can help people now. So.
Can we talk about square footage there and like the size of the cultivation facilities that you were actually working with? Because
So it had over 150,000 square feet of canopy.
wow, I feel like compared to like most facilities, at least in Colorado, it's ginormous. So with managing a scale like that, I feel like this is probably the most important key component to making sure that that stays sustainable and overhead. I'm sure there's a lot more pressure at that type of scale with your staff and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of harder to wrap your arms around something the bigger it gets. One of the main problems that I see is that there's often information siloing in cannabis companies between cultivation and post harvest. In larger operations that have different people in charge of those, I've seen sometimes it's hard to kind of wrap your arms around the whole thing in terms of product safety. It turns out, and so the thing with cannabis product safety is the main risks are from microbes, and the cannabis production process is kind of provides the perfect environment to give rise to a lot of different types of microbes, and so basically the larger your operation is, the harder it is to control pests and pathogen outbreaks. So when you've got a smaller operation and one person that kind of knows it like the back of their hand, it's kind of easy to walk into a room and know what's going on. But when you've got a very large operation with multiple different shifts, multiple different managers, then it becomes harder and harder to kind of get everyone on the same page sometimes. And so microbial problems, when they happen, can happen suddenly, randomly, and they can spread extremely fast. And so the analogy I use is like when you're walking across the street, you look left and right for cars, but do you look up for falling pianos? You know, that's the cannabis industry. We we don't know what's going to come down the pike next, a lot of the time, and so basically that's what I did at Native, and then I went on to own a couple different companies. I had a hemp company that I don't like to talk about because of the timing that we started it, and then had a company that was called Dreamleaf Partners, where we did consulting, and finally moved into my current role as Director of Product Safety at National Cannabis Risk Prevention Services.
Gosh, you got to be so proud of yourself. I feel like that's quite an accomplishment.
I hadn't really thought of it that way. I get bored easily, so I'm never ever bored because I'm always doing stuff. So.
Oh, I think that, a lot of issues that I see commonly in facilities is powder mildew, is even if they're not struggling with, pest and disease, like pest issues particularly, is seems like everybody has a room flare every now and again, or when they bring in new genetics and things like that. Do you have a specific like protocol that you have with that?
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of multiple layers, right? Like it also depends on what you have at your disposal. At Native, we had a lab, so we could test things across, sort of a spectrum of different problems. Most people are going to have to probably just watch the plants really closely. I mean, for example, russet mites are tiny. Like they are hard to find until there's lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
And so being able to have the plants quarantined and separately from the rest of your stock for long enough to know whether there's a problem is definitely essential. And it's something like I personally don't recommend moving plants between rooms. I've seen it a lot in a lot of different companies, but I've seen problems get spread around and get out of hand. Also, something that I run into a lot is people are unwilling to kill plants. And it's kind of baffling sometimes because if you've got a room with 800 plants in it and you don't want to kill one diseased plant, you're putting the other 799 at risk.
I've combated that as a consultant myself, is trying to go in and eradicate their mother rooms and things like that to really, be effective with the solution. And they can't trust that, the clones are going to propagate properly, or I don't know, that they're going to root at all. And it seems like they have, that natural kind of gravitation to like just pulling onto it and not letting go. And they think that, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's scary to interrupt your process. I mean, there's a lot riding on it. Cannabis is a 24/7 game. The plants don't stop growing, and so
Absolutely.
also, all of us in the industry, if we don't now, have at one point worn multiple hats, right? Like
Yeah.
if when you're working in a small company, you better learn how to do everything. And
Tyler,
so
OG Tyler can relate to that.
OG Tyler can relate, man.
He's done all of the positions in all of the places and spaces.
Yeah, no, but it's cool to learn about what he's talking about. Like these are things that I mean, I've done a lot of things, and you don't get the in-depth science behind things a lot of the time. So
yeah, a lot of it didn't really. I assumed there was going to be research that I could just look up, and there wasn't. Research that I could just look up. There was stuff from, Mississippi, the research that came out, but when I tried to reproduce it, it did not give me the results it gave them. But it gave me results consistently that were different, and the framework allowed me to build on it. But with corn, if you have a problem in corn or you have a genetics question in corn, you can look it up. But with cannabis, a lot of this research is being done right now, and so my background was in ag, and so I thought, well, there's standard USDA and FDA product safety kind of protocols, and so I'll just look those up. And so that's really what I did, and Look those up, and then you can find. It's like there's two secrets to science. One, a lab is just a workspace, and then the other is that it's all written down for the most part.
That's the
And
most incredible statement I've ever heard.
like really, if you understand the system you're working with, you can make it work. You don't have to have $1 million to do tissue culture. I had an advisor at CSU that told me that I'd never be able to do commercial tissue culture in a house. So 2 years later, in her class, I presented to the class on commercializing tissue culture of orchids in a house, just because it's a system. Like you can look at the system and figure out where you can work within that system. For me, it involved bleach and lots of Ziploc bags. Uh, but
I think that's what I really admire about you is that I've heard, I don't know, so many clients particularly be so intimidated by tissue culture, but I hear it so freely talked about amongst every event, every business owner, every head cultivator. But I see this intimidation factor, like where they've made it seem as though it's like untouchable or unmanageable, just like that. Something that unless you're getting paid in a proper facility and work your way to the top, like you'll never have an opportunity unless you're going to college, particularly regarding that. But I love that you've brought that kind of welcoming perspective on that this is something that if you're truly intrigued by, that you can find a way to properly
definitely.
succeed.
So like the two main expensive pieces of equipment in tissue culture, in autoclave and laminar flow hood. I didn't have either one of those when I was doing tissue culture. But an autoclave is just a glorified pressure cooker. It raises the boiling point of water with pressure so it can get hot enough to sterilize things. So I made media in a pressure cooker and built a glove box out of plastic, and I think the setup costs between $100 and $200 probably. But I've also worked in $100,000 lab, and it's much easier. Much easier.
So strains like Crippy OG or SFV, Larry OG, I see it a lot in these strains, but like that have these systemic issues. Tissue culture seems to be a great way to preserve them and eradicate these issues effectively. But do you have like something that people could at least look at their library and maybe dive into one of their favorite strains and actually be able to purchase the materials to be able to execute this properly, as far as feed and solutions that you're changing out? And can we talk a little bit about that?
So doing cleanup, you could do strain cleanup at home if you have a fairly high tolerance for misery. Um, the problem is that so the reason you can use tissue culture for strain cleanup is that there's a couple, 3 layers of cells in the meristem, the growing point. Basically, it's a region that's about a third of a millimeter, and those cells are undifferentiated. So they're meristem cells. They're like stem cells in animals. They can turn into any adult tissue basically, and they also don't have these channels called plasmodesmata, which is how viruses can infect. And on top of that, they grow very fast, and so it's hard for any pathogens to get into that little tiny region, and so that's the first part. The second part is getting enough of those little tiny meristems to survive that you can regenerate a plant. Um, Typically it's around 100, 50 to 100, at least in my experience, that you have to be able to take and get under the microscope and trim these impossibly small things down, and then have them survive. So at home, just the sterility part of it would be a major obstacle for that, because at home it's easier to use like big nodes. You just cut a section of stem, and then that can withstand the bleach that you throw at it and all the additional kind of layers of things you got to do if you're doing it without laminar flow hood, for example. So sometimes you can just do node culture, which you could do at home, and then if you do it well enough, you can just keep taking nodes off of the plants in the jars, and sometimes you can get it to outgrow the infection.
How many weeks approximately does that process take?
So cannabis is a slow tissue culturer. Actually, the more correct term is micro-propagation, but often people don't know what that means, and so we just kind of say tissue culture. Traditional in vitro tissue culture takes, I don't know, at least 6 months to get a plant back usually, and so get a rooted, hardened off, whatever. But there are ways to speed this up quite a bit too.
You got tricks? Got some tricks there, Andrew?
Yeah, I got some tricks, a few. So, without getting too deep into it,
Yes, of
cannabis
course.
doesn't like to be told what to do. Kind of like cannabis users. So in vitro, the way we get responses from the plant tissue is that we use different combinations of hormones in different ratios, and that effectively tells the plant to grow roots or shoots or what have you. I found with cannabis, it doesn't really like to have a lot of hormones thrown at it, and so if you can make sure that your in vitro system has enough gas exchange and the ability to have enough light production and relies on hormones a little less, you tend to have faster growing plants that are less wonky.
OG Tyler, do you have?
I'm here.
Yeah, what's going on over there? You got
I'm
any-
listening,
I'm
dude.
just
Like,
kidding.
this is great. Like, being able to listen, like, especially about cannabis, it's like not very much, like, many times whenever I'm like, dang, like, this is a lot of information. This is things that, you can bring back things that you love that have been tainted, through the years. Like, you can bring back those classics, I could go think of a list of them right now. You know what I mean?
If you
Like,
could have anything,
back
yeah, right now.
that was not tainted,
Yes. What would you?
being able to come back from the dead. Uh,
Just for you.
uh,
It's a tough one.
probably the hardcore OG, if I could find that.
Hardcore OG.
Yeah, because I don't know really where it's at, or if anybody has like, like if those
Let's go on a
people,
mission.
if those people even like, I'm sure that they have it in tissue culture, but I don't know, man. Like, that would be something probably, or like, I don't know, like some like
Some OG.
like kosher, or I don't, like something like that. Maybe I've always wondered what the Stardog guava from the clinic would have been like, if you could run it into rosin.
Oh yeah. It washes so nice.
So like that's one that I'd want to see, probably, just because it's like there's no way I could I don't know if find that same cut. And if I did, it probably would be tainted from someone. It's like any cut you get from any person is tainted, essentially. Like, it just sucks, but that's just,
I mean, you're right.
it's tainted love.
Tainted love.
So there's also another thing that's at play in like clones. People talk about getting tired, like the genetics get tired. And the analogy I hear most often is that it's like taking a copy of a copy of a copy. I think more what's going on is that every time the plant experiences, from tray to tray, bloom to bloom, it's still the same plant genetically. It's clones of the same plant, and the plant is able to kind of record stresses basically through DNA methylation, basically turning on or off genes based on experience the plant has had, and so these things can accumulate. If you've got a poor clone process, or you just, the plant's been abused for one reason or another a lot, they'll start to lose vigor. Another thing that can be happening is that the telomere regions, non-coding regions of DNA at the ends of the chromosomes, those get eaten into basically with every successive replication. Oh, thank you, I'm okay. The telomeres lose a couple of base pairs off the end, or one, I can't remember which. And over time, you end up with plants. The non-coding regions have all been eaten up, and it's starting to eat into into the coding regions. And the coding regions do things that are important to the plant's survival, and so that can also have a deleterious effect. Interesting thing about tissue culture is that there's an enzyme that repairs the telomere ends that's only present in meristem tissue, and that's called telomerase reverse transcriptase, I believe. And so basically, if you take a cut off a 3-month-old plant and you keep those cells undifferentiated, then you have a plant that is young that you can continue to culture off of, rather than having a plant that's been cloned for 1 to 20 years,
Yeah.
and has built up all this kind of emotional baggage over the years, so to speak. And so you can actually get rid of pathogens with tissue culture. You can reverse the aging process to some degree, and yeah, all around it's a good way to kind of recharge strains, because if you take it back to that meristem tissue, you can actually get rid of those methylated regions that have changed the way genes are expressed
I
as well.
love that you touched on that, because I think that's something that I struggle explaining to people sometimes, is that you're cloning out of like these pest and disease problems. Is like, if I start treating the plants and things like that, you're taking from the top growth and and only cloning off of that, taken from that. It takes 3 or 4 treatments with something like fusarium or some of the other things that I've seen. But I don't know. Is the only reason that I think I stuck with doing it that way instead of sticking with tissue culture or a lab, is just accessibility, like we were talking about with things at your house and things like that. And it seems, in a weird way, it seems like you can do it a little bit faster if you're cloning and you're efficient at it, and you make sure that there's no other contamination and no other
Yeah.
things. But also, that's not very realistic for a lot of people in multiple facilities and scenarios, of having another employee or just one other person's help in a garden. You never know how things get in.
Yep, and they can get in on a shoe or on like on the wind. I've seen facilities that just like didn't have an appropriate MERV rating for their air filtration, and so the spores just weren't getting purged. It's just kind of one thing I see or don't see with microbiology, because you can't really see most of it, is that people it just doesn't occur that it's a thing to most people because you can't see it. It's like out of sight, out of mind. People understand abstractly that microbes can cause problems in cannabis, but I hear a lot of confused kind of back and forths when people are talking about what microbes actually do to the plant and can do to humans.
Can we talk about that a little
Absolutely.
bit? Mr. Hatch, you just let me know when you're ready, and we can go through
Oh, yeah.
this beautiful PowerPoint as
Let's
well.
see.
I know Instagram unfortunately won't be able to see this, but we are going to be uploading it on the Treat Show channel, so that you can see it in full screen.
All right. And sorry, I'm going to be looking away from the camera here because. All right. So, my experience. I went to CSU. I've been in Hort for a while. Got a lot of years plant breeding, mostly orchids, a fair amount of cannabis too. I've been in the industry 6 years, about 10 years of micro-propagation experience, and about 5 years of directed plant pathology and microbiology experience with cannabis. I co-founded and directed R&D at Native Roots Colorado. I didn't co-found Native Roots Colorado. I co-founded their scientific operations department. That's an important distinction. And at the time, it was my home base was the world's largest indoor grow. Although I did say that to a friend of mine around that time, and he said, "Oh, which one?" And so it's hard to know, but it was 250,000 square feet total, and it was a very large
That's very
facility
large.
to start out
No
in.
matter what anybody should. Like
Right.
once you hit over 50K in square footage, like you are dealing with a whole different, and the more you go up, goodness.
And so I was lucky in a lot of ways to start there, just because I got to deal with just very large populations of plants and to see how it worked at scale. And so this is just more stuff I've done, not that germane to what we're talking about here. So basically, I've been a plant guy kind of forever. I teach at the Denver Botanic Gardens. I've got an upcoming orchids master class on March 3rd that I'm teaching in Washington, D.C. With Plant Cell Technologies, which is a tissue culture company. And yeah, cannabis really started all my botany. I was 12 years old and I was like, man, this stuff's expensive, but can't you just plant it? And so, the rest was sort of history. So at Native Roots, it occurred to me that, why are we sending out samples and then finding out if they're going to fail, right?
True. Very
I'm pretty sure
costly.
Nestle doesn't do that, and food production places don't do that. But it turns out, like most cannabis operations don't do any preemptive testing or internal testing. And so the first bad news they get is like the first word of it, and it's from the worst person to hear it from. And so we started doing just total yeast and mold counts and, genus level ID, speciation, if it was easy, really, because we didn't have molecular tools. And basically there weren't standards for the cannabis industry yet, and so I had to adapt HACCP. And basically, what we did was we zoomed in. Once we did our testing, we had it in place. Then we were able to kind of zoom in on the process and find out where any pain points might be. And so, like when we found an illness in the crop. Luckily, we had the ability to right away figure out what it was, and so through doing that work, we were able to find kind of practical solutions to solving microbiology problems at scale. And as a result of the work we started back then, I can't really take any credit for them now because I haven't been there in 3 years, but they now have a 0% failure rate or near to it. And they're also one of the few cash positive businesses here in Colorado that's in the cannabis space. I can tell you, though, that within, let's see, a very short amount of time, I might actually have it on a slide here, so I'm going to check so I don't repeat myself. So I'm just going to let this guide me here. Otherwise, I'll be a stoner. So the things that we found living in the crop were mainly two Fusarium species, Fusarium proliferatum and Fusarium oxysporum. And so we were able to verify their pathogenicity with Koch's postulates and then use the infrastructure we had already put in for testing to kind of like really take a look at everything really, really deeply. And so we were able to kind of wrap our arms around the operation like I was talking about. And, to do so, we had to learn, me and my team had to learn how, we were talking to engineers in Belgium that had built one system. We had to kind of become an expert in everything inside the grow because in a facility that big, everything has to mesh correctly or those systems don't work. And so, I don't know, it was a whole lot of fun. And, like I said, I get bored easily. And so it was kind of my ideal job. And so we were able to correct the problem by adapting HACCP, and then preventing future problems by just doing preemptive testing. And then I created a plant pathology coursework for the management. And, between that and getting all the systems like exactly dialed in and, the tissue culture that we started doing to clean up the plants, we were able to get rid of something that's very difficult to get rid of. Now, I know most cannabis companies haven't had, the luxury of being able to do that. And so what I developed at National Cannabis Risk Prevention Services is actually it's a product risk assessment, and it's got over 200 in-process controls that can be applied to solve problems. Basically, it identifies risk, and then we've got an academy that has 30 plus training courses to correct deficits in correct any knowledge gaps, and then basically if the problems are rampant enough or too difficult to find, then we can actually go out to the company and help them figure it out. One time I had to actually cut into irrigation lines on a wall to find that there were pathogens inside that had created this film and were just getting dumped into the pots.
What's some of like I think with water actually, what is some of the biggest obstacles you've seen just with water cross contamination and things like that?
So I do see people like put their sick plants at the back of the tables so that no one can see them, and that is one of the worst things you can possibly do if your system allows the water from those plants to get
Where it's drained
on the
away,
bottom
so
of all the
drain-
other pots. Yeah, because I've seen systems where if you water those pots at the back of the table, all that water flows forward and infects everything else along the table. So water quality. I've seen people. I've definitely seen like pathogens come in on water. It's not as common as them coming in on bagged media, for example. Like we tested 6 different brands of cocoa that were
Yes.
bagged on the market. All were heavily contaminated with fusarium, like every last one of them.
Wow.
Shockingly so.
Devastating.
Yeah, it's bad. And so, conversely, though, the dry bricks of cocoa you get are nearly always pretty clean. So it's really when you get the bagged cocoa, it's the step. I ended up working for one of these companies after I did the testing on their product.
Wow.
They hired me to figure out how to fix it. And so part of the process for breaking down the cocoa involves wetting it down. And if you don't do that correctly and dry it out fast enough, then that's where all the contamination happens. And
It's like an improper cure almost.
exactly,
if you will.
exactly. It's like not using water activity as a standard component of your cure process.
When I was working with Way to Grow, actually, they had I had never been exposed to like large manufacturing like that and pallets of product and just a completely different world of things product wise and just the way that they stack pallets with multiple products. And I'm not saying Way to Grow particularly, but just how things are delivered and to code and to be compliant for these deliveries is crazy though, with like moisture content and just like weather from state to state. Like I've seen multiple pallets like that you receive regardless of the brand that will have mold on the top of the as soon as you it can just be devastating sometimes.
It's kind of crazy. Like to keep the crop safe, you really, I mean, it's not difficult, but it is, there's a lot to it, right? Like you basically just have to know your inputs. Like you have to test your inputs. You have to know your systems in your grow. You have to know how the problems arise and cure, for example. I mean, product contamination only really starts in in the growing phase typically. Like most of the contamination I've seen has been because of poor cure processes. For example, water activity is the standard measure that they use to determine how much water is available for microbial growth in a substance. So in packaged foods like beef jerky or dried apricots or whatever, they use water activity to determine, is it safe to go into a sealed container, right? The cannabis industry has only kind of recently started requiring that. I think as of July of this year, they started requiring water activity testing. But one metric to consider is that 15% of the product as of 2020 fails initial state microbial testing. That number jumps quite a bit when you're looking at products on the store shelves. And so packaging, making sure the product is dry enough that it cannot grow more microbes from a single spore. That's like one of the main things that companies need to be able to wrap their minds around to keep their products safe. Because we're going to get into it here, actually. So I have a habit when I'm talking about stuff of getting ahead of myself and then finding out I wrote it down.
Oh, done.
All right. So to continue with the story, basically, we solved the problems with quality assurance, made sure the facility protocols and the systems were all evaluated through the lens of microbial contamination. We tested our inputs on an ongoing basis to identify sources and to kind of preempt any contamination issues from that. We produced clean planting stock through tissue culture, micro-propagation, and quality control. We had testing as a standard part of our production process to make sure that we weren't ever surprised by any results, if that makes sense. And it kind of all snowballed. I had kind of licensed to look at weed science, in a facility at scale, and there are lots of things that needed looking at. So, on the upper left, we've got just a really horrible case of powdery mildew. Whoa. There's a baby.
Oh.
Hi. I think I just dragged something around here, didn't I?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can help you.
No, it's okay. I'm beyond help here. No. All right. So right there we got powdery mildew on the upper left. On the lower left is Xanthomonas campestris. It's a bacterial pathogen isolated from some weed. And then in the middle are the kind of fuzzy part of powdery mildew that you can see, the green picture.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a picture of the conidial chain, the spores.
Oh my gosh, everybody has to like zoom in on this later. It's pretty cool to see.
It was a hard picture to take because we didn't have a good dissecting scope, so we had to take it with a light microscope, but it's 3-dimensional, so we had to do it on an open slide, and it was really interesting, but it eventually came out. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to
No, sorry.
do I was just explaining to the audience. There is a button I have to press that's very far away on the computer screen and very hard target to hit. There we go. I missed the baby again. All right, let's see. So really why we're talking about this is that, we make medicine, right? And some of these microbes can have very serious diseases they cause. That was an awkward way to say that. Anyway,
I think that's something that people don't realize. They can have the best of intentions with their product and their process, but some of these systemic diseases that they don't even know are occurring, they harvest that product, and whether it's put into concentrates and not part of parts per billion testing to even start, or even if it surfaces on the testing, is it's been years of people consuming these products that, or improper cures, like you mentioned. I don't know, as far as really quick, I would like to ask you, bacteria versus pathogen versus fungi, or
so like human pathogens. So a pathogen is an organism that can cause disease. Human pathogens are typically bacteria because they like our pH and our body temperature. Fungi do not. They like it a little more acidic and a little cooler. And so basically, if fungi were better at causing human illness, we'd all be screwed. Because bacteria are way different, like way more different from us than we are from fungi, if that makes sense. So anything that we use to try to cure a systemic fungal disease in a human is going to have off-target effects, meaning that it's going to be kind of poisonous to you too. And so it's a lot easier to kill bacteria in the human body than it is to kill fungi. This is going to be important later. So fungi do the heavy lifting in the plant world as far as disease. It's the reverse. So fungi cause most plant diseases, bacterial and viruses, et cetera, are of less importance. And so basically, just because there's a microbe there doesn't mean it's capable of causing illness. The vast majority of microbes are, beneficial or neutral.
Oh, thank you.
Did I answer your question?
I feel like you answered that beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in school right now. This is crazy. Seriously. What was it? You remember the first time you ever got high?
Oh yeah. Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But what I mean, what
the first
happened?
the first time I got really stoned, I went and walked the dog, and I came home, and I was gone for like an hour and a half. Like my mom was waiting for me at the door. Like, this is not normal. And I think I was 12, and I walked in, and I didn't know how to smoke well. I was using this water pipe thing, and it was like, to call it a bong would have been a stretch. Anyway.
It said Arrowhead on it.
Yeah. Right. And so I'd swallowed a lot of smoke. And so I burped a cloud of smoke into my mom's face.
Stop.
I'm not fucking kidding. It was, she's like, go upstairs. We'll talk in the morning.
Oh.
She let you slide for the night.
Was
She
like,
did.
I'm not going to talk to him when he's all high.
Yeah. She's like, this is not going to be productive. So anyway, yeah, I do remember the first time I got stoned for sure.
Do you remember like what it tasted like? Or I don't want to ask you like the strain.
Terrible.
Was
I mean,
swagger?
it was brown. I mean, we didn't have good weed. I grew up in the DC area in the 90s, and it was there was not good weed.
When was the first time you got the Cryptocron?
Breckenridge, Colorado, 1994.
Wow.
94.
90, maybe 95. Sorry.
What strain was it? Or what did
If
it
they
taste
even
like?
had strain.
Yeah,
it
what
was
did it
not-
taste like?
No, it was my friend Tom, and he was. It was fruity. I remember it was fruity. It was
like
frosty.
Fruity Pebbles fruity, or like fruity like a purple train wreck fruity? Or
Like Fruity Pebbles fruity.
Ooh.
And it was like not fully dry. I now know. And and yeah, but the effects were potent for sure. It was different. I remember bringing it back to my friends on the East Coast, and they saw it and they were like, "This is laced," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "See those crystals all over it?" And I was like, "No, that's THC. Those are
That's
trichomes."
like good,
And,
good.
they're like, "Nope." And then I took out a glass pipe, and they're like, "Oh shit, no. Now we know you're going down the wrong road here." I grew up only smoking blunts. That's pretty much the only thing anybody smoked.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're right up in the same boat with her. Bluntstown.
That's
Backwoods, even for sure.
I gotta keep my lungs strong.
What'd you
Strong.
just roll up in that blunt?
By myself.
Yeah,
Like an
what'd you
a-hole.
just face over there?
I know. I was trying to like share with you, but you're so far. It's like
Jeez.
okay, so I can't say it, but it's worth talking about for sure. Is first of all, this dispensary Greenfields out of Denver.
Ooh, say less. Greenfield, shout out.
They it's been a great experience so far. And anyways, I went there for Skittles from 710 actually, and they didn't have that strain. And so they recommended, I'm not going to try to say this, so you can say it for me, but it's Southern Star but with Z's at the beginning of both of those words. Like Southern Star.
Southern Star.
Thank
Southern
you.
Star, dude.
Okay. So you're going to try some.
Just that
you
Z.
get the rest by yourself. I'm not
s-
saying it
I
like
s-
that.
I smelt it. It smelt fire.
It really tasted good, and I feel pretty fantastic.
Just that Z, like.
I feel like I should have smoked more of it.
It's like my favorite strain for sure. Like lately, as far as that flavor, there really is. I mean, honestly, I was gonna say there's nothing like it, but this like I'm not gonna say it's the same, but it's nice to really taste that flavor.
I miss that Z taste.
I'm trying to only flower that my next run. That and kosher. That's all I want to smoke.
Just Straight Z. That's all anybody
Need a little
needs is a
kosher up
Z.
in there.
No, just
Come
run
on,
the
OG
Z.
Tyler.
No,
Shit.
yeah. At this point, I need to put a Z in my name because that's about it. But yeah,
That
put a Z somewhere. I'm a Z boy.
the Aussie G.
Maybe Zoji.
Z.
All right,
Z.
back to the PowerPoint.
Science. This is a house of science. All right. So, another one of these problems from contamination beyond the human impacts is that it's expensive as hell. I mean, when you have microbial problems, like if you have a failed batch, like it's not just the batch, right? Like it's the batch, it's packaging, it's like employee labor, it's like the shuffle that you have to do to
Can we
figure it out. You know what I mean?
can we touch on why you say that, because it is so important? Is how you said that the state is, you have to submit testing. It's not that we're not, but you really don't have accessibility financially right now to just go test things. I'm sure these owners would love to do that, but it's not part of the budget currently. And testing is expensive, but would you mind explaining what a batch is to people that don't know how they...
Yeah. So a production batch of cannabis is like a lot, basically. It's like a lot of one strain, right?
Yes, so if you had 2 trays, 4x8 trays of straw nana in your grow room, and then next to it were 2 more trays of Gorilla Glue,
Yeah.
would the straw nana and the Gorilla Glue together be a batch, or would it
don't
have
think
to
so.
be each strain?
I think it's each strain.
You're right.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I study plants. Not
No, you're right.
compliance.
You are right. I just wanted to make sure that people could understand what that really... So if you're doing a pheno hunt with 15 strains, or 15 different types of,
Yep.
it sucks for testing alone. Like, I hate to
For
put
sure.
it like that, but it's so expensive.
Like you can actually do in-house testing. It's not that expensive.
Can we talk about this in-house testing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like $3 or $4 grand will get you set up for like the ability to do to mirror the state tests, at least the ones that are plate based. I mean, it's going to be more if you want to do like the things like aspergillus, where they're pass fail tests that are that use DNA.
So aspergillus, Mr. Hatch, incredible. So aspergillus is failing everybody right now, and I don't even know a commercial grow that's not struggling or combating with that particularly. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts regarding this? Like, do you have any solutions, or do you think that there is some preventative?
So, aspergillus, yeah. So I kind of saw this one coming. When they released the new testing, it's a pass-fail test, right? So if it detects a single microbe, any DNA at all, it will you'll fail. The problem is that qPCR, which is the platform they use to do the test, will detect dead DNA as readily as live DNA, because it looks for like a little tiny piece of that DNA. And so like ionizing radiation, which is what a lot of people are using for the kill step to get rid of microbes, just breaks DNA, kills the organism, doesn't reliably destroy the DNA. And so I think it does to some degree, but it doesn't reliably do it. And so I think, the kill step is not as foolproof as it was before, when people were just doing plate-based testing. And so really the only way around that is to make sure that you start with clean materials, that your air filtration. It's really just making sure that all the things are done.
Would
be
you mind
able to-
explaining how, where does aspergillus come from?
Oh, so aspergillus is it's like an air mold. It's a genus of air molds. There's a bunch of different species. We test for 4 here in Colorado because those can produce mycotoxins, basically, and also they can cause invasive illness in the immunocompromised. And so aspergillus is it's like an air mold. It decomposes things that are there already in the environment. It's not a very important plant pathogen, and it doesn't affect humans unless they are severely immune compromised. the thing that it does really well is produce mycotoxins. And so mycotoxins are toxic chemicals that are produced as byproducts of fungal growth by certain fungi. And so, there's one that Fusarium produces with the colorful label of vomitoxin. It makes you vomit a lot. Also causes cancer. So, not as not as nice as just vomiting. Anyway, I think the lethal dose for a person my size, I'm 6 feet, of aflatoxin A, I can't remember. Anyway, is under 100 milligrams. I mean, it's so
Wow.
small that you eat some of it and it's pure. You're kind of toast. However, much less than that will cause cancer. So
That's terrifying.
yeah, it is. It's really horrifying. Now, the ones like deoxynivalenols, and the ones produced by Fusarium are not really tested for. We're just testing for aflatoxins and for ochratoxin, which leaves out a lot of other ones. And so basically, mycotoxin contamination to me is scary because sometimes they're concentrated, and when you make concentrates, a lot of people conflate living organisms causing disease with the toxins they leave behind and think a kill step will get rid of it. Mycotoxins are not required to be tested for unless you've already failed a batch and you're being remediated. And then we've got process validation, which allows a very large amount of untested batches to go through. What I've seen with microbial contamination is sometimes it can be completely random. You can have a bunch of clean stuff and then just like one thing just gets horribly contaminated. And so this all kind of compounds into a risk to the consumer that I don't sit very easy with, essentially, because from what I've seen in the industry, product safety is often an afterthought. Who it's not an afterthought for are product liability lawyers, who right now are very hard at work trying to establish causal links between human illness and cannabis so that they can kind of have a feeding frenzy. And so kind of the clock is ticking. Sorry, I get kind of passionate about this part because if we don't do something now, we're not going to have an industry. The people. So my brother-in-law from a former marriage had a nonprofit that he started to test baby food to see how safe it was. He found that Walmart organic baby food was the safest.
No way.
Right?
The most rigorous testing.
Right, exactly. It's because they can afford to do the quality assurance and quality control. The ones that made you feel really good about it, like kind of like
The Whole
Foods?
Foods?
Yeah, like well, not necessarily Whole Foods because that's kind of they've got a lot of money to
extra.
do QA/QC, but like the smaller brands that are like organic or like natural, those were the most heavily contaminated with heavy metals and microbial, byproducts or microbes themselves, and so.
Dang, Sam Walton over there freaking at Walmart, man. They made it good.
Yeah, so, and I hate, part of me died when I said that anyway. But this is what we're looking at, right? This is the reality of producing medicine. We had an industry that grew up like so fast, right?
Absolutely.
It scaled so fast.
Hurt
The
itself.
regulators didn't have any idea what to do, so they just kind of made blanket regulations until they noticed problems, and then they started making more targeted ones. But the problem is that the way standard practices grew up in the industry happened before we really knew what the major risks were, and so now we really kind of have to go back and take a look at our processes. To make sure that we don't end up in the newspaper, essentially, or hurting someone,
I think that's terrifying that a lot of dispensaries, when I worked in the retail side is I saw a lot of consumers coming in that their grandmother is sick or, somebody in the family, honestly, that they really, really care about and they want the best. They have the best of intentions. These people haven't consumed cannabis at any points of their life. And it is terrifying that, back in the day, even at parts per millionth or these specific categories that they're doing now, before it wasn't that they were being neglectful. It was just the knowledge and the awareness, I don't think was there. I think the industry was young, but seeing people with compromised immune systems like consuming this product often.
And don't get me wrong, I love cannabis. It makes marvelous, safe medicine if it's grown and handled appropriately. And so, I really am not. I am not trying to make anyone's life difficult at all. But as you'll see here, so we talked about a little bit about, there's a lot of microbes associated with cannabis. Most of them don't cause any problems, but some of them can. They can cause human illness. Up to death, as well as, reputation damage, all sorts of other things downstream. And so there hasn't really been any federally mandated safety testing, and so the regulators are kind of starting anew on this one because it's been illegal. And, most operators that I've talked to don't fully understand the risks associated with the microbes commonly found in cannabis cultivations. Because not everyone's a microbiologist. And, I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. Most people don't study microbiology. And so.
OG Tyler, do you have any hash questions? Because you're the hash man. Like, as far as, concerns or.
As far as, I don't know. Like he was saying, it pretty much like you start with. If you start with sick material, then your hash is gonna suck. There's no putting a lipstick on a pig. It's gonna be a pig. Type of thing, right? At the end of the day,
You're right.
So the goal is to try to. It's like with everything. Make sure your veg is straight. If it's not, you're screwed, right? So. It's you're healthy. You got to make sure that stuff is, and your mom's, and it's.
Absolutely.
But that's really what it is. You start with good material, and you're gonna have good hash, and I just wonder how many batches of weed or hash I've smoked that I've been dude, this is fire, and it's been contaminated with God knows what, right?
I think we're all guilty of that.
Oh
Yeah. And with the invasive illnesses, it doesn't matter for the vast majority of humans.
Right.
It's only severely immunocompromised people that can get that can have fungi start to grow inside of them from this, or people with existing scarring in their lungs.
Oh dear. Maybe I should take it easy on the blunts. Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. If you should or
as you're
not.
rolling up a freaking tree trunk over there, what's going on?
And I'm not going to talk you out of it.
You want to hit this side?
You rolling up that Z whatever?
You got that? Yep.
So basically, the testing, like I explained, has been evolving in real time. Colorado used to just require total yeast and mold and Shiga toxin producing E. coli and salmonella, and now they that whole list they're doing. Water activity is the thing I am happiest to see on there. Well, actually, I like seeing the aspergillus on there as well. Oh shit! Can I say shit on a podcast?
Oh yeah.
Oh shit! Hell damn! All right. I suck at computers. All right, here we go. All right, so systemic fungal infections. Basically, these air molds, like aspergillus and fungi from the microalgae and fusarium, they can actually live inside the plant without causing any symptoms. And so you won't even know they're there until your building management system screws up. Somebody forgets to water. The AC goes out. Yeah, exactly. So it's like when a stressor happens, then those plants then those microbes can actually cause disease, because the majority are opportunistic pathogens where they have to either have a stressed host or there have to be so many of them that they can basically infect.
Wow.
Whereas a true pathogen one or a small amount of organisms can cause disease in a healthy individual. And
You know, I'm just thinking about it in my head. I'm like, dang, you know how many places could like benefit from having you come through and like help? You don't know how many places I've heard of, been at, seen, whatever the case may be, and everyone has issues with. I mean, it's wild, and until you break it down to like pinpoint like where it's coming from, how to stop it, you're just you're like a little hamster on a wheel. Essentially you're
It's the
just like,
truth.
well,
Yeah.
it's like the difference between like installing a fire alarm and just putting out fires all the time. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
right.
and
if you do
honestly,
it at the front end, it's easier.
these companies can't afford people don't realize even on a head grower how much pressure financially for that company is when a room does flare from one of these diseases and these guys don't know what it is and it's not their fault. This isn't.
Yeah, it's like it's a new field. It's like, and
Yeah.
yeah. Plus, like like I said, not everybody's a microbiologist. I didn't study microbiology, but like I said, everything's written down, and I had a lab. So, I guess if you do it for a long time, you can call yourself it.
So a lot of these places need to like take a step back and go, hey, listen, I may not know as much about this as I think, or I may be open to like learning some new, things about this. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from too. Is I think you may have companies that could pay for it, but they may be stubborn and then
Yeah.
just like stuck in their
Or
thought
they don't think
process,
they have those problems. Like, it's incredible that you said that because I don't think a lot of these guys even identify the fact I've heard people say like, oh, we just have fungus gnats or oh, we just have thrips, and they'll think that it's like such a mild issue. And don't get me wrong, like I get it, but like I think that they don't realize that those things cause so much detriment in so many other ways. And like things like fusarium and I don't know, just these opportune moments with just the cross contamination of pathogens alone. If you have any pest in a room carrying and traveling around, whether they're eating the plant tissue or not, it's kind of putting your plant at risk, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. So it's luckily the solution that we offer is not very expensive. Like it's essentially a checklist. Our team is multidisciplinary. We got people across the country. And it's taken a huge amount of time and experience and just teamwork to put this thing together. And it's something I'm very proud of. But it also can be done remotely. It's just basically kind of for lack of a better term, a bullshit sifter. It's gonna like you input your products, your project or not product. What do you call your plan? Whatever the fuck it's called. Anyway, all your business parameters, and it will tell you if you're going to run into problems, and then provide solutions to those problems.
That's beautiful. He's like, give me your shit list, and I am going to clean your house, get it all organized, and send you on your way.
Yep. And my favorite part about it is that we don't ever possess any of the things we ask you for. They go to a third-party server, and so we can review them without putting our clients at risk at all. And so you can give us your dirty laundry, and we don't ever have it, so we can't be subpoenaed.
The trust. I feel like that's a huge.
Yeah, the trust thing. Like, so when we do assessments, usually there's about 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning where it's like tense, and because we're asking a lot of questions, right? But then after like that 15 or 20 minutes, they realize, they're like, oh shit, this replaces a dozen consultants and like huge amounts of money, just with a kind of a checklist. And so it's really been kind of gratifying to see it take hold and see it get out there in the market.
I'm ready.
What, to smoke that blunt?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good Lord have mercy.
J-Lo, I think you have a problem.
It's a tree trunk.
I was like telling Andrew when he got here, I was like, God, I just realized that I smoke like a half ounce at least a week in like not that long a time, but I didn't even realize.
Yeah,
backwoods guzzle.
yeah, I may have been guilty of that myself.
It's like a diesel truck with that thing, dude. Seriously, it's like you're just going down the road, just burning that freaking fuel.
Where's your dab?
Yeah. I stupidly forgot my nail at home, and then now
You want to
just,
use my rig?
No, I'm just chilling.
I clean it.
I'm high. If you know what I mean, like it's good for me. Like,
It's good.
yeah, fantastic.
You want to hit this blunt?
No,
I want to hit that blunt.
I'll smell like I smoked the blunt.
You should.
Good Lord, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something real quick. Anytime I leave here,
What happens?
I gotta leave my clothes outside overnight because it smells like straight Woodsville.
Oh my gosh.
Straight Woodstown.
I wear perfume.
Yeah, it's backwoods.
Anyway. Moving on.
So, the most worrisome thing for me that I've found in working with cannabis is invasive fungal illnesses. So, like, excuse me, the same microbes that are found in cannabis, just kind of like living systemically in the plant, are also some of the most important causes of invasive fungal illness in humans. Now, this only affects the severely immunocompromised, but when you get it, it kills 50% or better of the people that get it within a couple months. You inhale the spores, and since your body can't fight them off, it goes to the wet, warm tissue of your lungs, and then spreads from there and kind of grows through you like a loaf of bread, for lack of a better analogy. And one of the problems is that
Sorry.
Yeah, that thing got you.
good God Almighty.
That thing is a finger. Jeez, crow.
I feel like I need to recline and spread my
I'm
fingers
so
across my
sorry.
double-breasted suit.
That's like a Cuban cigar or something. You out there in Miami puffing on that thing, dude.
You know you want to hit it.
No, I mean, like,
Try it.
no. But
Sorry, Mr. Hatch.
anyway,
Oh, no problem. Usually I don't get called Mr. Hatch unless somebody's saying, you're going to have to leave.
It sounds like so fierce.
sounds like he's in the Matrix and he's about to get
Yeah.
freaking Mr. Anderson.
So, so essentially, long story short, if you're not using water activity as the measure of is my product safe to put in a sealed jar, then you're running the risk of, having a single spore in a plant that looked otherwise healthy turn into, thousands or hundreds or tens of thousands and go directly into the lungs of a person that is maybe smoking this product so that they can eat after chemotherapy. So that, for me, like, it begins and ends with the consumer. If we don't have a consumer that trusts our product, like, we don't have a product, right? Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
so, once again, let me reiterate, this is wonderful medicine. Like, I endorse it. I smoke it myself.
But how much of it is clean?
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. What are the costs? Some people might be thinking, well, we would have heard about this, right? But so it's hard to study cannabis users. For one, we don't stay put, but for another, it's hard to tease out health outcomes in cannabis users because we do other risky things, right? And so we just, on the whole, drink more, we use other drugs more, we smoke tobacco more.
It's that rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah. Ride motorcycles?
Why not?
No, I don't do that.
And so it's that plus the newness of the kind of industry, the lack of federal spending on research, all these things kind of coincide. There's also that they usually only find these illnesses as the cause of death at autopsy. They only autopsy 1 in 4 people in the general population. That number is much lower in the immunocompromised population because it's typically assumed that what made you immunocompromised, if it was cancer or something life-threatening, is what killed you. Autopsies are expensive.
One
Right.
in 4, that's actually such a low margin. Like,
In the general population, but in immunocompromised people, probably way less, way less. And so that plus the fact that diagnostic tests aren't very good, so like you can't just do a test and have it reliably tell you whether or not you've got this illness. That kind of led me to believe that that people might be dying from it right now. And it being attributed to other things. And so I met with the guy that directs research on invasive fungal illnesses at a major hospital, and he agreed that this was possibly going on. And so I think now we're at kind of a critical point as an industry where if we don't decide to make sure our customers are protected, someone else is going to. Right? A company like Walmart that has money to do QA, QC, or a track record showing the value of doing QA, QC, right? Will come in and displace the people that built this industry, right? Like, that's not what I want to see happen. And so I'm just trying to get the word out, like cannabis is great medicine, but producing it at scale has new risks that we're just kind of teasing out. And, here's the kind of... Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
God, that's gnarly for the people that
There are
can't see.
There are much worse ones that I could show you. I don't usually show people those because you can't unsee a thing, really. Wow. So this is this is Rhizopus oryzae. I've cultured this off of cannabis flower. It causes about 70% of the world's cases of mucormycosis, which kills more than 50% of the people that get it. Let's see. And then next, that one is not as common. Aspergillosis. These aspergillus fungi that produce mycotoxins do the same thing. It kills
Look
better
like
than
dandelions.
50% of the people.
They do look like dandelions.
Yeah, kind of. They have these cool spherical conidiaphores, I think they're called. It's been some years since I had to remember that, so hopefully it was right.
Oh.
Anyway, invasive fusariosis, again, kills more than 50% of the people
Terrific.
that get it. And I have cultured 2 of the major causes of this illness out of cannabis, like cannabis that showed no symptoms. So, a certain proportion of the clones... A certain proportion of the clones on the market are just carrying these, right? Like that people are growing in their commercial grows. And so, here's just more, horrifying information about mortality, et cetera. All right. And then, bacterial risks are less. Salmonella and E. coli are the ones that we test for. Those kill a few hundred people a year. So they're not, and that's from foodborne illness, and so they're not typically considered like a super huge risk to cannabis users. But this guy here is one that I haven't heard anybody talk about really. So shit. Sorry, I have multiple things going on: bad eyes, large thumb or fingers.
You just let me know if
General
I can
lack
do
of
anything.
dexterity. Can I just have you?
Yeah, I would love to be your clicker.
You'll be my clicker. Amazing. I've gone mad with power. Yes, with power.
You take the
All right. So now we're on to human allergens. So this guy is Alternaria alternata. I found it as a leaf spot fungus on cannabis plants. It just caused minor damage to the leaves. It wasn't anything too terrible, but we found a lot of it. And so,
Like, how much is a lot?
well, I mean, we found it commonly.
Really?
Right? Yeah, because it's just an air mold. It's what causes like hay fever. And so it's a sensitizer, though. So people that have severe asthma can have fatal asthma attacks triggered by it. So it's something that I've cultured off of cured flower and isolated from living plants. And so also, if it's growing on the plants, that means it's almost certainly growing in the media as well, or in other places. And so if that's an employee health and safety, kind of risk there.
As far as HVAC systems and tables and walls and things like that, uh, is there a way that you can clean and sanitize to actually kill this, or
It's really all about air exchanges and MERV rating and proper sanitation, making sure that you don't have like standing water anywhere, making sure that you've got a fine enough filter in your HVAC system and a enough full exchanges of the room air per hour. It's typically 30 to 40 to purge the air of spores. And so you can reduce your risk. You can eliminate your risk by kind of doing all the things, but you can reduce your risk with, any one of those things. Just finding standing water, eliminating diseased plants, also eliminating, like getting rid of any plant debris that's lying around, because that's just a lot of these organisms can't cause disease until there's a lot of them, and so it's like feeding the army that's going to kill your plants, basically.
so while we're talking about that, is I see a lot of garden cultivators where they use the leaves, or I don't know, they'll leave them on the top of their media and just let it grow in, or they'll use, I don't know, with the best of intentions. You
Yeah,
know?
and like you do that with bonsai for sure, but you don't eat those or smoke them. So typically the things that are, you don't want to do that. Long story short, don't do that.
Excellent. Just want to
Right.
clarify.
Because they put out spores that then float everywhere, right? And so also it'll select for things that are good at eating that kind of tissue.
Would you like me to go to the next?
Please do.
Oh, some great photos in here.
I took all of them myself, including that one. No, I'm kidding. I bought them, but no, I all the one before I took that photo. All the ones that are microscope pictures, mostly, or at least the unpolished looking ones. Those are mine.
Tyler, I'm just
Ma'am.
making sure that you're.
I'm
You
looking
feel-
at all this
oh.
stuff. What you talking about?
Just making sure.
I got smoke in my eyes from freaking all this freaking backwoods in here.
Do you want me to open the door?
No.
All right.
The backwoods is fierce.
This is a hot box now.
So we talked a little bit about mycotoxins already. All three of those, all three of these genera produce mycotoxins. I think the Mucorales may. I haven't really looked into it. Anyway, so the thing about mycotoxins, they can't really be destroyed under normal cooking temperatures, and they're not easy to remove from flour. Some of them dissolve more in a polar solvent, and some dissolve more in a non-polar solvent, and so it's a broad, diverse range of toxins, of different chemicals, and so they're very serious. Just because some of these, it's not like they just produce one each. They, Fusarium proliferatum, for example, produces, over a dozen mycotoxins that all do different horrifying things. And so, cancer, reproductive harm, rarely fatal all at once, because you just don't often consume that much, because there has to be a fair amount of the fungus growing. It's more the additive effect of consuming small amounts it over and over again that will give you cancer or various other problems. Yay, right? And that doesn't show up for a long time, so it's another thing that's hard to say it came from any one thing.
Is there any signs or symptoms that people can look out for in their gardens? Like if they don't have access to a lab, or currently is say powder mildew, do you see any related things to some of these systemic diseases?
So powdery mildew, it's an obligate biotroph. It can only eat the host plant, and so it doesn't Can't make you fail any tests. That's one common misconception I see, because you can't culture it on a plate, right? And so also it doesn't produce any mycotoxins of note, and it can't cause human illness. But the air molds are a big problem. The aspergilli and the
Can you like Clorox your walls or your HVAC and like?
you can. I mean, you can use oxidizers of. There's a variety of oxidizers that work well.
Do you like any particular product for HVAC?
For yeah, well, I like a lot of them. I hesitate to recommend any one specific one, but I do like chlorine dioxide. I also like for some things like peracetic acid and hydrogen peroxide combinations.
God, it just like I can smell it already when you say that.
Yeah, and the smell changes. That's the thing I like about it. It smells different, but then as it evolves acetic acid, it starts to smell more vinegary.
Oh yes.
Anyway,
Wow.
nerds. So next slide, please.
I'm so sorry. I forgot that I had the pad.
Yeah, the power went to your head. So, they basically, to sum it up, they don't require mycotoxin testing for most products. Like it's only when you fail something, and or that was not tested for microbials. It looks like. Anyway, yeah, we can move on from there. Zearalenone is mycotoxin produced by Fusarium. So aflatoxins B1, B2, G1, and G2 are produced by a few Aspergillus species. We test for those here in Colorado. Ochratoxin A is produced by about 20 species, including Aspergillus ocraceus and Penicillium verrucosum. I've cultured both of those off of or out of cannabis flower. Next slide, please. So biopesticides, relatively safe, but Bovaria bassiana has rarely been implicated in human illness. Trichoderma harzianum, much more. It has also caused fatal human illness in ag workers. So
I always love that word, Bavaria Bassiana.
yeah,
It's just I feel like it should be a hip hop song or something.
maybe I'll write a song about it. So, in terms of plant pathogens, we talked about opportunistic pathogens are different from true pathogens in that they can cause disease in stressed plants, or they can cause disease when they outcompete the other flora in the environment. So, like Fusarium, the species that I found are normally harmless, but when the plant gets mistreated, then they can cause disease, or if the systems are so kind of off that they just favor growth of those. Next slide, please. All right, this is an interesting one. That was in my hemp field. I was excited. Yeah, I was. I also kept a population of
variegated?
russet mites for 9 months to study them. Like people look at me weird, but yeah, it's variegated, but it's from the virus. It's a beet curly top virus.
Wow.
I didn't know what it was. I took a picture of it, and then my friend Whitney Cranshaw gave a presentation on hemp diseases, and it had just been identified.
You can see like the stunting in the new growth or the smaller leaves.
Yeah, so sometimes it'll just be one branch.
Okay.
And then like the stunting is in the new growth, and it has a really, really unique presentation. It causes like the whole leaf to turn pale green except for oblong splotches of dark green, which I've never seen anything like it. And so
It's like it almost looks like damage from a bug or something like that. Like just the way that it's the pattern is on the leaves, but not necessarily.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, at first I was like, oh my God, it's mites or something.
Yeah, it
right?
looks all speckly like that. Sorry.
Good. So with signs and symptoms, signs are evidence of the actual bacteria. If it's like a piece of fungus, or I mean the actual pathogen. If it's like bacterial ooze or like a chunk of mycelium, right? Like that's a sign. A symptom is the chlorotic leaves, for example, on that, and the stunting. And so symptoms are more difficult. It's like the old joke in plant pathology is, my plant has chlorotic leaves. What is it? What's the problem? It's like, well, everything. It's just about everything to some degree. So, but beet curly top, that chlorosis is very, very unique for sure. I haven't seen anything quite like it. So signs are better to go with, but often they require specialized knowledge and like a microscope or whatever.
That is a great photo, though.
Thank you. I also took these. They're scary.
Yeah, you can see the stalk there with the almost like tan, I want to say, or light brown.
Yep. So that's the typical like it's a brown ring. Sometimes it's a purple or reddish ring, but it's the vascular tissue. Like the fungus grows up the vascular tissue and feeds in there, and then eventually blocks it, and then the plant just wilts like overnight or in a matter of hours. And so Fusarium oxysporum, the mycotoxin producing fatal illness causing guy I was talking about earlier, that's a pure culture of it that I grew. It's when we're sending it out for sequencing, there's yield reduction from the few infected plants that we had.
You can see the purple and like reddish color in the outside of the stalk from the stunting of the uptake, or
You can actually that is one of the stress responses that we saw sometimes with was reddening of the stems, but it also produces a red or purple pigment, the fungus itself, and we'll be able to see that in a little bit. But on the far right is a really good indicator if your new growth has that marginal chlorosis.
so disappointing for a lot of guys out there because they come in ecstatic when they see that. Honestly.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty. Well, yeah, sometimes nature is pretty and deadly. The so yeah, next slide, please. So on the right, you can see Fusarium wilt. Right, to the right of the wilted plant is the same clone. It's just the one on the left all of a sudden crapped out because its vascular tissue became occluded with fungus, and then on the left is root rot caused by Fusarium as well. We're able to isolate Fusarium in each of these cases.
That's my most difficult disease as far as diagnosing to my clients, like where they almost don't believe you.
Yeah.
Because it does shift so quickly, like from vegetation, how it can sometimes go dormant, like you said, if there's nothing necessarily flaring it. And then when you flip them into these large rooms sometimes with a big climate change, say the staff just like defoliated the shit out of them and then blasted them with these new lights or whatever,
Yeah.
it'll get them to flare in like the first 7 days they're in flower. And it's so devastating to see huge facilities like have plants die in like overnight, like you're saying, where you'll come in and I've seen it like over 48 hours realistically, where like the second day they're like fried.
Yep.
It's just sad.
Yeah, it's terrible. There's I was gonna make a joke, but I'm not gonna bother with it. All right. Next slide, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You should be, Jay. Jeez. All right. So, Pythium. Oomycetes are not fungi. So they were thought to be fungi for a long time, but their cell walls are made out of different material, and there's other differences. But basically, they're spread by water. They can actually, their spores can swim. They have flagellae, and so they can swim like sperm.
You hear that,
Through the
Uchi
water.
Tyler?
Yeah.
Gotta watch out for those splishy splashies.
And so they can spread through a cultivation, in the irrigation system pretty easily. So on the right, that's one of the signs is those little arrows are pointing to oospores, and they have a characteristic halo around them, like a thin margin of a lighter color. And those are their sexual reproductive spores. So next, please.
You're the wild one over there.
I love some
making
Pythium
cat
talk.
noises.
You love some
and
Pythium talk. Talk nerdy to me.
Talking all crazy over there.
So basically, the way I never thought a conversation about Pythium would go there. Anyway,
Being proactive.
being proactive. Yes. I just put on my announcer voice. I'm like, being proactive. A robust quality management system. I don't know why I'm just reading it off there now. Anyway, so quality management consists of quality assurance, which is planning things on the front end so that you don't have problems, and quality control, which is testing on the back end before product gets out the door to make sure that quality assurance worked, basically. And so that's your quality management system. I'm on the subcommittee for the ASTM's quality management systems for cannabis, which is kind of cool. So I get to see what's going on in real time with that stuff, which is neat because there's a lot of people working on it now, which is really exciting. So basically, it has to have two parts, right? You have to have your process controls dialed in to make sure that you don't have problems, but then sometimes you can't predict every problem, so you also have to have testing on the back end to make sure that you're not going to get caught with your pants down. And so major commercial operations have a lot to lose. And so to avoid that risk, it makes more and more sense to put a small amount of it towards quality control, a small amount of money in your budget towards quality control rather than risk total failure as a business. So proper sanitation, HVAC, and these other process controls, they prevent risk far more effectively than relying on just like a kill step or chemical controls. It's much easier to prevent problems than it is to get rid of them. And so healthy, fast-growing plants are kind of your first line of defense. If you're growing plants that are strong and growing well, they're just much less susceptible to disease to begin with. So you can keep your spore load down that way.
The resilience.
The resilience.
Is that what you're referring to though with like these healthier, younger plants? Is that their cell walls or them themselves are actually more resilient to?
Yeah, basically, if they're healthy and growing fast, microbes have a lot harder time causing any problems.
Lovely.
And so, proactivity versus reactivity on the front end, we got employee training, proper process controls, QA/QC, a kill step, and clean planting stock. But reactivity, it seems to kind of be what a lot of people do because about 15% of all of this flower that hits the MED testing fails, right? For microbials, just microbials. So I think we can do better. Water activity. God, I talk a lot of shit, huh? I'm sorry.
Did I mess this up?
Huh? No, I wasn't talking shit about you. I was talking shit about the industry. I was like, we could do better.
We can always do better.
But we could always do better. That's for sure. And also, this is my job, and so I'm always looking at it, and so I'm always reading these advisories and like stuff coming out. And so anyway, so if you put in a little bit on the front end, it might seem like a lot on the front end, but if it catches up with you on the back end and you didn't put it in on the front end, it's gonna seem like a hell of a lot more. If that makes sense. So an ounce of prevention or whatever, pound of cure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next slide, please. So water activity, this is the measure that you need to use. Aside from raw moisture content only tells you how much water is in a substance. Water activity tells you how much water is available for microbial growth. And so water activity has just come online recently out here.
Is there like an ideal range that you could be looking for as, I guess, more of a preventative when you're dealing with this moisture content?
Well, getting a water activity meter.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Guess that adds up.
Yeah, well, they're expensive, but it's...
How much do one of those these bad boys run?
I think, they don't really run much. They just kind of sit there on the benchtop. But like the benchtop model costs about $3,000 to $5,000.
OG Tyler, that's what I want for Christmas.
Yeah. But so when I made
Sorry,
edibles,
that was the most deadpan joke ever.
when I made edibles, we had to like read the amount of water that was in like the gummy.
Oh.
You know, we used like a Brix. It was
Really?
like a Brixometer or whatever, or a Brixometer. I don't know how you pronounce it really, but it would like let us know how much water was like, you know, in that. But we'd have to get it to like a certain amount. But it was cool because then you'd be able
Wow.
to actually see, you know, a difference if you didn't.
Was it difficult to like dial in, or did you see
Yeah, I mean,
dramatic
it just was
ranges?
like because it was hella hot. So like,
Oh.
when you're trying to read this, like because you can't let like any light like get like in the reader or whatever. It was really interesting. So you'd have to like cover it really quickly and like make sure no light would get in there and like, but you can like apparently like people would do it for like their fruit or like they would.
Yeah, so Brix is a measure of sugar
Okay.
content. And so you could measure water content, I think, indirectly if you knew how much gelatin and how much sugar
Oh, I see.
was in there. I don't know. I'm just kind of going out on a limb.
Yeah.
But like moisture content is what a lot of grows use. I don't know how many people are using water activity, but water activity is really the only thing that's going to cover your ass. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Because if you put, so walking back a little bit, these systemic pathogens that are just in there, like you put one of those in a jar and it's even a little too wet, you've all of a sudden got tons of those, right?
Yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
you've got an unsafe product. So kill steps like RF pasteurization or gamma or other irradiation could be useful. And actually, I don't know. I think that they're a valuable addition, but they don't substitute for proper like quality control and proper process controls. I've seen companies rely on them and then have problems that got out of hand and they didn't know what to do. And so mycotoxins aren't really destroyed by the kill steps. It just prevents people from getting illnesses, though they do prevent people from getting invasive illnesses. And so a kill step I'm a big fan of for that. They also don't reliably prevent qPCR-based contaminant testing failures, which is why we're seeing a lot of failures right now, I think.
I wonder if they're like actually concerned about it, like the state itself. Like, I think everybody I know in the industry has struggled at one point in time with testing, and they're all wonderful and, connoisseur brands and things like that. But it's just really been an obstacle for everybody.
Yeah, I think we need I met with a bunch of regulators recently and was just like, nobody wants to maybe tell you this, but we can't like call you guys with any problems.
Yeah.
Like we need companies that can afford to have a consequence-free environment to share product safety information so that we can all learn about product safety in this new crop, right? Like, because right now you can't call the regulator and say, hey, I've got some weird shit growing on my weed. Do you want to come look at it? It's like you have no idea what's going to happen, like, right? And so, like, problems don't get recorded. The product just gets destroyed, right? Like, it's like, and then nobody learns anything from it. And so we need a framework where we can work together and share information so that we can reduce regulations, right? Like, because it's not just like without that, the regulators are just in a position of having to just make more regulations every time something happens.
And they really don't understand the related
Right.
parts to operations.
Yeah, and they haven't grown cannabis at scale for the most part, and so like, they love the industry too. The ones I've talked to have all been pretty awesome, you know, like, and they don't have a job if the industry falls apart, right? Or they don't have the same one. And so they do have a vested interest in making sure that, everything is, that the industry is nurtured and is able to grow. But I think the only way to dial in, the regulations and make sure that at least the testing burden doesn't increase for the operator is to really understand what the exact level of risk from all these different contaminants is. And that just takes research and sharing information.
I think they should go back to old school where they had one lab, but I think it should be the state actually, like regulated by the state, but where they have one lab that really like, I don't know, just a whole different structure, a whole different. I think that they should be doing testing. I think it's great, but I think that financially for a lot of these facilities as well, like there's got to be something more, as the market shifts and as prices do drop and fluctuate constantly, is testing now. It's like, $500-$600 a batch. It's expensive when you're getting.
Shoot, you have to expedite your testing, like all that, like, bro.
You're right. And then sometimes the labs get backed up and like you don't know if the shit's even like honestly like the trust. Like where's the trust?
Yeah, in-house testing makes a lot of sense for a large operation, for sure.
We need it. Okay. Am I supposed to be?
Yeah, you can move on. So, yeah, this just kind of goes back over what we were talking about earlier. It's better to rely on proper in-process controls than to have a bunch of chemicals you're spraying. So, yeah, we're doing big things. I mean, we're we're changing the world. Like this is the coolest industry I've ever been a part of, and I've been equal parts fool and adventurer my whole life. And so, I was talking to another advisor at CSU, and he said, "What haven't you been?" And I said, "Successful." Because cannabis is where I actually found where I could make money with plants finally, and periodically. So anyway, unfortunately, there's a tobacco lobby and an alcohol lobby and certain groups that just don't like the devil's lettuce. So, these guys have money. On one side of us, we got people that want our industry. On the other side of us, we got people that don't want our industry to exist. They both have lots more money than we do. So if we want our industry to remain in our control, I mean, it's really our shared responsibility to make sure that we take the lead, like each of us, in doing what we can for product safety and like to increase the knowledge base of operators and consumers, because that's the only way that we're going to get into the modern world, like basically, and be like, other established medicinal crops.
That is so important. It is. I think that a lot of people have become so guarded because everybody's been burned at this point. But it's like, I don't know, it's almost like the opposite though. Now we really do need to like come closer and really do take that leap to be good to one another.
Yeah. Let's see. What is it? Collaboration is the new siloing. I don't know. I've been trying to make that catch on. It hasn't. Anyway.
I think that sounded great.
That's all I got to say about all of that. Do you have any questions?
OG Tyler.
You coming at me?
Yep.
I mean, what do you have coming up in the future? That personally,
I don't know. I just got divorced like 6 months ago. And so I moved to Denver. I've been making music. I might do a show in Vegas at some point.
Vegas is like every man's favorite space, like whether they're married or getting divorced.
I had never been until MJ BizCon last week.
Really?
However many weeks ago that was. Time is elastic sometimes.
I got to see Mr. Hatch there. It was nice.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I lost the last of my money in the slot machines on day 3. It was $2. No, just it's expensive as shit out there.
Oh my god,
I had no idea. I was like,
expensive.
Wait, it's like a $70 Uber to get anywhere, right?
Anywhere. Like we went to like this house party with the Adam Dunn crew. Shout out to the Adam Dunn show. Everybody listening needs to watch and listen.
Shut up.
Shut up.
And yeah, it seriously was $100 or something. Like going there, it was like ridiculous. It was like $15 coming back, or however the fuck all that, like Uber and like, so frustrating.
Bro.
Well, we did a long show today, gentlemen.
Yeah, sorry, that's probably my fault.
Oh, this was
No, it was
great.
good. That was the most information probably, I mean, we've had on the podcast yet. You know?
I think in the future, though, we would like to have Mr. Hatch back, because I'd like to bring on a couple breeders out there that grow mainly with soil as their practice and like fully organic, versus like a couple grape breeders that, you know, do the hydro side and like really perform well on both, and kind of, yeah, be able to talk to one another about these different techniques and methods that we've
Yes.
learned, what they prevent, what they help. Is there hope? OG Tyler, do you have anything to say before we wrap this up?
I mean, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. Like that's
Oh
like
my
that's it. Like, you know, like
That's a wrap.
that's all I got. I mean, good Lord.
Did you smoke that Z stuff?
No, I haven't smoked no Z. I've been watching you smoke a whole freaking finger of it. Jeez, crow.
Smoking a whole plant. Here.
All right.
Yes.
All right, I'll share.
Oh, I'm not complaining. You know.
All right. Mr. Hatch, is there anything that you'd like to close out with?
No.
Really?
Well, yeah, an old Irish toast. May those that love us, and if they don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he won't turn their hearts, let him turn their ankles, so we can tell them by their limping.
Exactly.
I'm not a religious man, but that's stuck.
I like that.
That was beautiful. Would you like to hit this spot?
I would.
I think I was trying to think, like, we have big things coming up, but I think we should keep it a secret. And
Yeah, I mean, be prepared. Be on the lookout. Like, be excited. Like, you know.
freaking excited.
Yes, like there's gonna be, you know, fun times ahead. We're getting into the new year, 2023,
Yes.
virtually. Like what? We have a couple weeks left.
This was going to be
Yeah,
virtual?
Oh yeah,
I'm
like
just kidding, sorry.
the things where I need a lot of improvement. Like, I think everybody just has to be patient. I think like by our like whatever episode, I think I'm gonna be so much smoother sailing.
Yeah.
You guys did great though.
Thank you. You did great, Jay, though.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody that has subscribed and watched. Please find OG Tyler on Instagram and me, Jaybird JLo.
Yeah, find me on there find me on there.
Oh, well, we're gonna make a page. We have some minor improvements to work on. Okay, but you guys just hang in there.
It's a couple minor setbacks for a major comeback, so be careful.
Mr. Hatch, if you want to
That's
get a
all I
hold of
think,
him, he doesn't have an Instagram currently, but I
Smart
mean,
man.
You
message.
can get a hold of us at ncrps.com.
That's
yeah,
perfect.
we've got a web form on there.
And if you have any troubles there, just slide into Tyler's DMs and
Ladies preferably, but like no, I mean no, anybody, and especially if you have good product, good flour, good hash, if you know the people, if you whatever the case is, slide on in.
We need
OG
that
Tyler
good.
303. Yeah, that's the key. So
all right, peace and love.
peace.